Committee, Jamie Raskin.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much.
Birthday,
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Brad and Congressional Integrity Project, and thank you all for coming out. Today's impeachment inquiry vote is indeed part of the continuing effort to deny Joe Biden the office of President of the United States. And what we saw it happen on January 6, 2021, when Donald Trump incited a violent insurrection to overturn the presidential election, to set aside the work of Congress in the peaceful transfer of power, to disrupt Vice President Pence in the execution of his duties. And they tried to stop Biden from becoming president then. And now this ridiculous impeachment drive continues the effort to keep Biden from being able to do his presidential duties. You know, the reason that mysteries are called whodunits is because they start with the crime, and then you have to try to figure out who did it. But the Biden impeachment investigation is not a whodunit, it's a what is it? After 11 months, nobody can tell you what Joe Biden's alleged crime is, where it happened, when it happened, what the motive was, or who the victims are. Maybe the funniest thing I've ever seen in Congress was yesterday in the Rules Committee when Joe Neguse was asking Congressman Reschenthaler what the crime was, and he kept saying, "We don't know, that's why we need to create an impeachment inquiry." And they went around the track 3 or 4 times, and he's saying, "But what is it? What is the crime that you're looking for in the impeachment inquiry?" And he said, "We don't know, we need an impeachment inquiry." It was like an MC Escher print. And then finally, somebody passed Reschenthaler a note, and he said, "We're looking for a high crime or misdemeanor." And then Neguse said to him, "Well, which high crime or misdemeanor?" Look, Joe Neguse was involved in a real impeachment investigation where there was a real presidential offense when Donald Trump incited a violent insurrection against the Constitution, against the Congress, against the vice president, against the people's election for president. And we didn't need Sherlock Holmes or a magnifying glass to try to find the presidential crime. It came right into this House and it smashed us in the face. So, they've got a mountain of evidence, but all the evidence shows that Joe Biden is not guilty of any presidential offense. In fact, their own witnesses came to their only public hearing on impeachment, and to a witness said that they did not see sufficient evidence to justify impeachment. Well, don't we need an inquiry then to get more evidence? No, they've gotten whatever they wanted, and don't take my word for that, because Chairman Comer has gone on TV and bragged about the fact that he's gotten 100% compliance with all of his subpoenas. They've gotten hundreds of thousands of pages worth of documents and dozens of hours of testimony from 9 different federal government officials from the Biden administration. And now they're talking about obstruction. It's too late for that, not when you're bragging that you've already gotten everything that you've looked for. The only people obstructing with Chairman Comer's investigation is Chairman Comer, because Hunter Biden said he was going to come today and testify, not just before a few people in a back room, but before the entire committee staff, the entire Congress, the entire country, and the entire world. But they wouldn't have it because they insist upon backroom interrogations where they can then cut and paste and snip and release distorted pieces through selective leaks to the media in order to tell their fraudulent story. So I've got on the Oversight Committee the best committee of new members of Congress that exists, and I want to introduce one of them to you. I think we're starting with Representative Robert Garcia, who is from the 42nd District of California, the former mayor of Long Beach, California, who knows a lot about being a good executive. Please welcome Robert Garcia.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking our ranking member, the leader of our Oversight Committee. Jamie Raskin is a true leader in this effort. I know that in just a few minutes, some of us are going to be back in the House floor, including myself, debating against this impeachment inquiry, which we all know is an extreme political stunt. There is zero evidence of any wrongdoing of President Biden and linking him in any way to Hunter Biden's business dealings. This inquiry is an embarrassment to the House. It's an embarrassment to the country, and it should be an embarrassment and shameful moment for the Speaker and his entire conference. We are back to debating debunked Rudy Giuliani conspiracy theories. We're back to debating something where there's zero evidence or linking that links the president to any wrongdoings. And we've heard over and over again from Chairman Comer that he wants to hear Hunter Biden's testimony in public. And now here we are again. They're going back on their word, and they're refusing to allow Hunter Biden testify in public. And why is that? Because they know they have absolutely zero evidence against the president. And I want to remind ourselves back to something that was said just a few minutes ago. The leader of this is Donald Trump. We are doing and going through this process because Donald Trump wants to get reelected to President of the United States. And this Congress, the majority, will do everything in their power to ensure that Donald Trump gets reelected. And we all know that he is driving all of this process. And along with Donald Trump is his main lieutenant, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Congresswoman Greene, as was said on day one, filed impeachment documents against President Biden. And because the Speaker cannot control his own conference, he is now listening to the most extreme wings of his body, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, to ensure that they try to impeach President Biden. We are wasting our time, and we're not getting to work for the American people. I want to now introduce one of my colleagues and a great member from California, also on the Oversight Committee, and that is Congressman Jimmy Gomez.
Thank you, Robert. First, let me just thank everyone that's here. I got elected in 2017. I was the first Democrat that was elected after Donald Trump became president. And I served with different chairs of the Oversight Committee. And the first one was Trey Gowdy. And for Democrats, Trey Gowdy, we always thought that was as low as you can get. But after experiencing the chairmanship of Chairman Comer, we realized that it could get lower, that it can have no integrity, and he can actually make Trey Gowdy look like a staunch, upstanding American. And that's what we're dealing with, a chairman that really doesn't know what they're doing, and they're just doing the bidding at the same time of Marjorie Taylor Greene and the right-wing Republicans who control not only the House Republican Conference, but also in the Senate and in the party itself. And that's because Donald Trump wants to be president once again to avoid any kind of legal prosecution, to avoid any being held accountable. And that's what it comes down to, plain and simple. Donald Trump wants to go after Joe Biden because he was held accountable by Democrats following the evidence. There is zero evidence when it comes to connecting Joe Biden to his Hunter's problems. That's zero evidence. So, but the Republicans don't care about that. They don't care about presumption of innocence. They don't care about following the evidence. They don't care about any of it because for them, it's not about following the evidence. It's about political payback, and it's about making sure Donald Trump gets elected in 2024. And if he does, then God help us all, because we will have a bigger tyrant than we did when he was during his 4 years of presidency. So this is not the end. This is only the beginning. But we're going to vote no when it comes to this investigation, impeachment inquiry. But this is just the beginning. This is supposed to be held. This is supposed to be held at the highest levels, right? This is not a game. This is something that can make or break our democracy. When our institutions start falling apart, when people use what they can because they can. When I first got elected to office, somebody said, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And that's what we've seen over and over. They can start an impeachment inquiry, doesn't mean they should because the evidence isn't there. They can file a censure resolution, doesn't mean they can, but doesn't mean they should. Because every time they do that, it nips away at the foundation of our democracy and our republic, and people lose faith. And they hope that enough people lose faith in our country that they hand over the presidency once again to Donald Trump. So we're gonna stand up and we're gonna keep fighting. With that, let's see who's here. I'm gonna kick it over to a representative from Florida who's been distinguishing himself not only on the on oversight but just on Twitter and making sure that he holds these Republicans accountable. With that, I'll hand it over to my friend Jared Moskowitz. Thank you.
Twitter, real life. Well, first, thank you for having us here today to discuss this topic. I want to thank future Chairman Raskin, because those days are coming based on the chaos of the 118th Congress. The 118th Congress, a historic Congress, going to be known for accomplishing only two things: removing a speaker and expelling a member. That is what the 118th historic Congress has accomplished. But let's go backwards. Let's go to the very beginning. Joe Biden is sworn in, and within hours of becoming president, people in this building are filing articles of impeachment. And in fact, other members, other Republicans start copying them in the Donald Trump Friend Olympics, trying to be invited to Mar-a-Lago, and they start filing articles of impeachment. Before a single hearing, before a single deposition, before any documents were even requested, they are filing articles of impeachment, prejudging. We then have all these hearings. They're disasters. It's complete failure theater on behalf of our Republican colleagues. No evidence. And they invite their own constitutional scholar, their expert, their witness. And of all the documents they've assembled, the boxes and boxes of documents that this White House, the Biden White House, has turned over, being transparent, something the Trump administration did not do in those investigations, right? What does their witness say? Of everything we know today, it does not rise to the level of impeachment. It was awkward. And so here we are, right, doing this impeachment inquiry vote. And they're so confident in their impeachment inquiry vote. They think the evidence is so overwhelming. They think this is so important that right after they vote, they're going to run out of town for 3 weeks. They're going to leave. They're going to vote and run. They're not even going to hold another hearing. Well, if it's so overwhelming and the crime is so egregious, where are they going? Why aren't they having a hearing? Why aren't they taking the next steps? Because it's theater. It's fake. It's to please Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump's got 50% of the nation's impeachments. All half of them. In American history, Donald Trump has, but he's got 100% of the indictments. 100% of the indictments. And they can't save Donald Trump, but what they want to try to do is they want to try to run up the score on Joe Biden, even though there's no evidence. Senator Chuck Grassley just came out today, who's been working on the investigation in the Senate, and he said, after all the facts that we've uncovered, there's no evidence on Joe Biden. Why aren't our House members listening to Chuck Grassley? It's why in these hearings you don't hear them say Joe Biden. It's Hunter Biden or James Biden. Sometimes they throw in Commander, the dog. But they never talk about Joe Biden because there is no evidence on Joe Biden. And with that, I want to introduce Deborah Ross from North Carolina, who is a fantastic member. Deborah?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out today, and thanks for the folks with the signs in the back. Let's hold them up. Yeah. Woo! We are standing here today as the House GOP moves ahead with their baseless impeachment inquiry. Today's vote should tell you everything you need to know about House Republicans' priorities. We haven't secured aid for our allies, most urgently in Ukraine and in Israel. We haven't passed additional funding for humanitarian relief for innocent people in Gaza. We haven't even finished the annual defense authorization budget, harming our nation's armed forces and service members. In just 6 weeks, the government will shut down if Republicans don't start working across the aisle to fund it. And every time we have extended government funding, it has been the Democrats who have done it. So instead of addressing our nation's most pressing needs and the world's most pressing conflicts against democracy, what are we doing today? Moving forward with an unfounded impeachment inquiry based not on fact, but on right-wing conspiracy theories. As my colleagues before me have said, there's simply no evidence to proceed with an impeachment inquiry despite all their efforts. 11 months of efforts. Just this week, numerous Republicans have openly admitted that there doesn't seem to be any real evidence behind this impeachment inquiry. At an impeachment hearing in September, the Republicans' own witnesses, as you've heard, confirmed that there is not enough evidence that President Biden committed a crime. The Constitution is clear. The president can be removed from office for committing a high crime or misdemeanor. President Biden has done neither. As Republicans continue confirming again and again. Like Speaker McCarthy before him, Speaker Johnson is simply caving to the extremist members of his party in an attempt to hold the Chaos Caucus together. And he's doing it at the expense of the American people and democracy around the world. Republicans continue proving where their priorities are. Political point scoring, not serving the American people. They've already sent subpoenas, reviewed thousands of documents, interviewed witnesses, and produced nothing. Nothing. After a year attacking President Biden for partisan gain, it's time to get back to the real work the American people sent us here to do. We need to put people over politics. Reasonable Republicans must reject this sham inquiry. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Congressman Maxwell Frost from Florida.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here, and first off, I want to wish a happy birthday to our ranking member, Jamie Raskin. Maxwell Alejandro Frost, proudly representing Florida's 10th Congressional District here in Congress, and today is a sad, ridiculous day in our institution and as the House of Representatives, as it's being weaponized to vote on a baseless impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden, demanded by a former president that has zero credibility and has been charged in 4 criminal cases. And unfortunately, today is not the first sad, ridiculous day of the 118th Congress. As a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, I've watched as our committee has spent the last many months spinning in circles as Republicans hold one embarrassing hearing after another, one embarrassing press conference after another. Just the other day, our chair of our committee going out and saying that Hunter Biden was indicted to help him. Let me remind you that as we hosted our first and only impeachment inquiry hearing back in September, where the Republican Oversight Chairman was so embarrassed to have called for such a mediocre and fruitless hearing that we didn't do another one. And now, despite months of trying to stir and string together absurd conspiracy theories that are baseless to catch President Biden, House Republicans are still coming up short because they have zero evidence. Their own experts that they brought on the committee said there was no evidence, and nearly every credible news organization has discredited their claims. Even Fox News is saying that Republicans have provided zero proof that President Biden has done anything illegal. This is a smear campaign, plain and simple. They're pissed off that they lost the last election, and now they want to weaponize the United States Congress and our awesome powers and abilities to smear this president. And it's being called by Donald Trump. They are looking to do his bidding. Let's look at the timeline from before when former Speaker McCarthy came out and said, we're not going to have a vote on an impeachment inquiry. We're not going to do anything relating to an impeachment inquiry. Then 12 precious days pass in which threats were made to him. One of them that was followed up on, part of the reason we have a new speaker. And he completely flip-flopped on that to appease Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the extreme MAGA right part of his party. And let's not forget that Donald Trump has been obsessed and scared of Joe Biden since 2018, when as president, he abused the power of his office to withhold military aid to Ukraine, to pressure President Zelensky to investigate then Vice President Biden and his family, all in an effort to help his re-election bid. And when he did lose that re-election bid, he incited a violent and deadly insurrection right here in the United States Capitol. This is the person who is controlling the Republican Party. This is who Republican members of Congress are beholden to, not the American people, not their constituents. It's Donald Trump. And they will do anything within their power to ensure that he wins come next year. This impeachment inquiry is baseless, it's shameful, there's no evidence, and it's a waste of time as a governing body. It is no surprise to me that 50% of this country doesn't vote when they turn on the TV and they see baseless censure after baseless censure, while kids are being mowed down by assault rifles in their own damn classrooms. Then they turn on the TV to see the House of Representatives wasting time on an impeachment inquiry with absolutely no evidence. It's disgraceful and shameful, and we have to do better. And next up, I will introduce Representative Melanie. Have you got her? Oh, okay. Representative Melanie Stansberry.
All right, great, thank you. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Representative Melanie Stansberry, and I want to take a moment to just acknowledge the reality of what's happening right now in the world and how it directly links to what's happening in this building behind us. Right now, on Russian state media, they're covering that the United States is not going to pass support for Ukraine, that we are giving up on global democracy and our responsibility. And Putin, of course, is smiling on the U.S. right now, while his friends are filing an impeachment inquiry today. Now, we have to understand the history of how we got here. I was working in this very building as a Senate staffer in 2020 when Donald Trump won that election. And I have to tell you, I, like probably many of you, woke up that next morning and I felt the fear, the anguish, and the uncertainty of what would happen to our democracy, our nation, and our people. I didn't want to run for office, but when I returned home a year later and got asked if I would run for the State House and then for Congress, I answered the call because I was deeply disturbed by what was happening in this country, the erosion of our democracy, the erosion of our institutions, and I answered the call and said, okay, I'll step up because we have to defend our democracy. Just 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump went on national television and said, on day one, I want to be a dictator. And when he got asked about it a couple of days later, you know what he said? He doubled down and said, no, I want to be a dictator on day one. So let's be clear about what's going on here. Donald Trump was put into place in 2020 in part because of election interference by Vladimir Putin. Not just a few years later, as Trump was seeking to double down on his efforts to hold the presidency, his buddy, Rudy Giuliani, went to the media and planted a story in the New York Post. Guess what? They made it up. They claimed that Joe Biden, the former vice president's son, had been involved in some shady dealings that implicated the president. Then Rudy Giuliani went to Ukraine. He tried to blackmail Ukrainian officials to try to make the case. And then Donald Trump violated the Budget Control Act and withheld federally appropriated money that was meant as aid to Ukraine because guess what? President Zelensky wasn't going to do his bidding against Joe Biden in the 2020 election. So, for the last several years, Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, and others have attempted to use their platforms to cast doubt about what actually happened. And after thousands and thousands of pages of financial statements and witnesses, they haven't found even one iota of evidence that President Biden was involved in any kind of deal or activity that would rise to any kind of criminal activity that would justify an impeachment. And as birthday boy Jamie Raskin, future committee chair, stated, they came in front of us in this very building just 2 months ago And they held a public hearing, and guess what? Their own witnesses said there is not enough evidence to impeach this man. So what is this actually about? This is a campaign strategy. This is Donald Trump, who went on his Twitter account and told his supporters in Congress to impeach Joe Biden. This is Donald Trump, who went to his supporters and called them and coordinated behind the scenes and told Chairman Comer to hold an impeachment hearing. So they did. There was no evidence. This is President Trump, who's now told his supporters and his speaker, because this is his speaker that he put in place here, to try again. So here we are, standing here. We're going to cast our votes in a few moments this afternoon, while Vladimir Putin is sitting in Russia right now, smiling because the United States Congress cannot pass legislation under this Trump presidency and presidential scandal to get aid to Ukraine and our international partners, while his folks are doing Trump's bidding in the House of Representatives. This should be chilling to the American people. They are trying to get Donald Trump reelected because when they tried to do an insurrection on this House, it didn't work, because the rule of law prevailed and the American people prevailed and our democracy prevailed. Donald Trump wants to be America's dictator, and we won't let it happen.
I first want to thank my colleagues because they have laid out the facts as clear as anyone could. We have worked diligently. As you've heard my colleagues talk about the amazing leadership of the Jamie Raskin, who I also call the GOAT. Listen, we work hard. And we work hard because we actually believe that we were sent here to do a job. We didn't come to be actors and actresses. We came to do a job. We actually believe in the institution, the very institution that they tried to tear down physically. And right now we know that they are continually trying to tear us down from within. When we swore our oath to protect against enemies, foreign and domestic. And let me tell you something. Those of us that serve on oversight, especially those of us that are specifically Democrats, I feel like we are constantly fighting domestic enemies, and no one should feel that way. The American people should be outraged right now. Outraged. When we knock on doors, they're not telling us to go and come up with a sham impeachment. They're telling us that they are concerned about their safety if they've got crime happening in their cities. They're telling us they're concerned about the migrant crisis. They're talking about the price of food. They're talking about jobs. They're talking about gas. They're talking about climate change. They're talking about housing. What they're not talking about is a president who has a drug-addicted son. And let me tell you something. These Republicans love to talk about fentanyl, and they talk about the crisis. And they act as if they give a damn. And we know the reality is that they don't care. Because if they did, they would have compassion for a man who has a son that has been addicted to drugs, made decisions, most likely induced by that daggone same addiction. And now somehow they have turned that into the president of the United States, who happens to be a father, should also be impeached. I don't get the math, and we know that they're not good at math. But as I like to say, the math ain't mathin'. Especially when you consider the fact that the previous speaker, and who knows how many speakers we're going to have. I mean, some people are optimistic that, this is only going to be the second one. We'll see if we end up with another speaker before the 118th is over. But we know that the previous speaker said, oh, no, we don't need a vote. We don't need a vote on the impeachment inquiry. So now, all of a sudden, you do need a vote? Tell me what's changed. Nothing has changed. The only thing that y'all have done is that you've invited and then uninvited and then invited back. And I don't really know where we are, but we know that Comer loves to say the quiet part out loud. It's interesting. When the cameras are rolling, I mean, if he was right here, he would say the quiet part out loud. But as we were sitting there today, in the room that Hunter Biden was not told to come to. But as we were sitting in that room with an empty chair, it's amazing how quiet Comer was. Now, he goes out on Fox News and everybody else, and he has a lot to say. And in fact, I'll leave you with this because you've already heard from the Smurf caucus, but he decided that he wanted to go on the news and he wanted to say that he didn't want Hunter Biden to testify publicly because he was concerned about the fact that the Democrats, that's us, the ones that are fighting for democracy, he didn't want us to have an opportunity to engage in questioning. Now you tell me if that's what democracy looks like. All we are living with these Republicans and all we're getting is false equivalencies. They want to act as if they are the real fighters for truth, when we know that they are the exact opposite. The very same people that are deciding whether or not they're going to pursue some sort of contempt, the very people that are doing that, two people still have subpoenas that they've never responded to or answered. They were sitting in that room and they want to talk about holding somebody else in contempt. False equivalencies. False equivalencies look like Marjorie Taylor Greene showing nudes of Hunter Biden in the Oversight Committee as if that's got anything to do with impeachment. And then got the audacity to feel away about me calling certain states and the laws that they've moved through their states deplorable. False equivalencies. And finally, the biggest false equivalency that we are dealing with, and then I will turn it over, is the fact that you had someone who was and continues to be a danger to our country and our democracy. And he was impeached. Now, the Senate didn't have the courage to do what they needed to do, but the House did their part. The House brought the charges. So now what they want to say is, well, that's just all presidents. So go ahead and impeach the current president so we can again draw a false equivalency as if. That's not what we are supposed to do in this country. And I don't really care if you identify as a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. You should be outraged that your tax dollars right now are being wasted on nonsense instead of taking care of you. You should also be outraged that from a national security standpoint, I mean, I'm glad that the Senate finally got Tuberville out the way. But let me tell you, all they do is deliver national security issues for us. We haven't been attacked at this point, but just because we haven't been attacked, don't believe that we can't be attacked. So I need people to wake up and start voting for people that are going to be serious about doing the work of the American people.
All right. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Ranking Member Raskin. For 12 months, the Republicans have been investigating Hunter Biden and trying to find some link to Joe Biden. They have collected more than 37,000 pages of bank records. They have received 75,000 pages of records from the National Archives. They have received 2,000 pages of documents from the Treasury Department. They have received confidential IRS information, confidential FBI information. They have gotten witness testimony from approximately 10 government witnesses, including the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Attorney in Los Angeles, the special counsel in unprecedented fashion during an ongoing investigation, as well as senior officials in the Department of Justice and in the IRS. The problem with this investigation is not that they don't have documents and materials. The problem they have with this investigation is that all of those documents, materials, and transcripts of testimony show no evidence of any wrongdoing by President Joe Biden. None. Certainly nothing that would amount to a high crime and misdemeanor. So when asked and when pressed, what is the evidence that would justify, after 12 months of unprecedented cooperation from the Biden administration, in direct contrast to Donald Trump in 2019, who provided 0 documents to Congress's impeachment inquiry, what can they point to? Well, Chairman Comer went on TV last week on CNN. And what did he point to? The one piece when he was asked for what credible evidence do you have, the only thing he could point to was the allegations of a bribe related to Burisma, the Ukrainian company that Hunter Biden served on the board of directors. Well, funny enough, that was the investigation that Donald Trump tried to extort and coerce President Vladimir Zelensky to do in 2019 by abusing his power, withholding essential aid for Ukraine in order to help his political campaign. So as the lead counsel for that investigation, we looked into those claims. We had 17 first-hand fact witnesses who came in and testified. And every single one of them said that the allegations related to Burisma were completely bogus. That it was not only U.S. official policy, it was the EU's policy, it was bipartisan members of the Senate and the House, all of whom wanted the prosecutor general in Ukraine to be fired because he was not prosecuting corruption. Now, let's see, did they look into it in this Congress? Yes, they did. They had Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's business partner, who was also a member of the board of Burisma at that time, in for closed-door testimony, and he was asked, what did you know about the firing of the prosecutor general? And you know what he said? He said that Burisma believed the prosecutor general was good for them. They had him under control. Because in reality, by removing the prosecutor general of Ukraine at the encouragement of Vice President Biden and official U.S. policy, that would hurt Burisma because the next one would investigate corruption. And in fact, he did. He did investigate Burisma after the fact. That is the only allegation that Chairman Comer can point to of any wrongdoing by Joe Biden. And in fact, it is the exact opposite. It runs counter to Hunter Biden's interest. And if they wanted to know more about it, they had the opportunity this morning when Hunter Biden showed up to testify. He wanted to testify in public to speak directly to the American people after he has been slandered, attacked, and borderline destroyed by the Republican Party. And what does he do? He comes here ready, and the Republicans won't take his evidence. So we're about to have an impeachment resolution because they say they need more evidence the morning that they refused to accept evidence and testimony from their central witness. This is a complete political sham that has no evidence, no support, no facts, and no reason to move forward with impeachment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dan. All right, so I'm just going to sum up here. It's a great day for the autocrats in Moscow, for the kleptocrats in Mar-a-Lago, for the theocrats in the majority of the House, but a bad day for democracy as the Republicans succeed in blocking aid to Ukraine, and now they think that at least they're going to be able to succeed in voting for their counterfeit, fraudulent impeachment drive against Joe Biden. So the good news is that we've got strong pro-democracy groups like the Congressional Integrity Project and great democracy leaders like the people behind me who are going to fight to defend American democracy, the Constitution, and our freedom. Thank you for coming today.